Breaking news. North Korea has just launched a missile against a U.S. Navy ship. The ship was destroyed, killing 25 U.S. sailors. North Korea has said the ship was operating in their territorial waters. But satellite information from other countries in the region show that U.S. Navy vessel was operating in internationally recognized waters. China has condemned the attack and said it will not intervene against any retaliation against North Korea. President Trump has ordered all troops in Korea on high alert and ordered the mobilization of 20,000 troops and equipment to be deployed to the Korean peninsula. But a high-ranking source inside the Pentagon has indicated that this mobilization of troops and equipment is unfeasible at this time. The reason, the source says, is because all the pre-positioned ships based across the world that are capable of carrying the equipment needed to wage a ground war have been infected by an unknown computer virus. This virus has rendered these ships inoperable. Without these ships and others like them, the chances of waging a successful campaign are in doubt.
The scenario that you just saw is becoming more and more reality for global ships along with the United States. Until now, the primary worry of the United States government's counterterrorism groups have been stated by CBRN, which listed threats in order of likelihood, including chemical, bacteriological, radiological, and nuclear, said Coffer Black, Vice President for Global Operations for Threat Analysis for Blackbird Technology and a 30-year veteran of CIA's counterterrorism efforts. He continues that since Stuxnet's terrorism concerns have morphed into KBC, this includes kinetic, bacteriological, and cyber.
Cyberterrorism and cyber attacks are two phrases that are commonly interchanged in today's society. Today we see cyber attacks on the daily. Cyber attack is a deliberate computer-to-computer attack that disrupts, disables, destroys, or takes over a computer system, or damages or steals information it contains. There are many methods for conducting cyber attacks, including infecting computers and networks with viruses, worms, and which slows down or damages computers, exploiting spyware to probe for vulnerabilities or steal data. A cyber attack does not include physical assaults on computers using weapons, such as destroying computers with hammers or explosives. Although the United States experienced several hundreds thousand cyber attacks in the ensuing years, none rose to the level of cyber terrorism. In other words, politically motivated computer attacks against other computer systems that cause enough physical harm or violence to generate fear and intimidation beyond the immediate victims of the attacks.
On the other hand, cyber terrorism involves attacks that produces physical violence against persons, properties, or critical infrastructure. These attacks cause widespread fear of physical intimidation beyond immediate victims. Stuxnet was one of the first cyber terrorism attacks the world had ever seen. Stuxnet, considered the first known cyber weapon, caused centrifuges critical to uranium processing to malfunction in Iran's processing facility, setting back that nation's first attempts to develop a nuclear program. Stuxnet is a malicious computer worm first identified in 2010 that targets industrial computer systems and was responsible for causing substantial damage to Iran's nuclear program.
The Stuxnet malware was created by one or more unnamed nation-states. The primary goal was to target the Natanz uranium hexafluoride centrifuge facility, in particular the Siemens Industrial Controllers, also known as PLCs, and the associated information technology and physical systems. The Stuxnets consisted of a series of computer attacks targeted industrial controllers used in Iran's uranium enrichment facility in Natanz. With Stuxnets, computer programmers created an intrinsic code capable not only of manipulating the industrial controllers that spun the centrifuges at the enrichment facility, but secretly recording plant operations with centrifuges were working properly and replaying with signals back to the plant engineers during the attacks, so that they thought the centrifuges were operating at normal operation status.
Instead of merely destroying the centrifuges, Stuxnets primarily target humans, the Iranian operators and engineers at the Natanz facility. Why? To confuse the Iranians, erode their technical confidence, throw the enrichment program into confusion, create long-term inefficiencies, and cause major delays in the manufacture of weapons-grade uranium-235. Needless to say, these goals were largely achieved.
The Merchant Mariner Act of 1920 allows the United States to use the U.S.-flagged merchant vessels in a time of emergency, which allows them to take control of any U.S.-flagged vessel to support a war effort or a natural disaster. These ships would be used to transit goods, soldiers, munitions, equipment, anything you could think of that would need to be used to fund a war effort. Prepositioned ships such as those in Alameda, California, are also used during a time of war. These ships will be stocked with fuel, munitions, anything that would be needed, and these would go across the ocean to go and fight the war or help a natural disaster. Unfortunately, these ships, as well as our ship here, are not very well secured. These ships do not have a high security function on board, and they do not have a security team on board at all. These ships do not have a vessel sit pier side. There's minimal security. There's typically a gate guard that is present, but security is not at an extreme level. No military ID or even a TWIC at times is required to gain access to these vessels. The idea behind these vessels as they transit to their destination is to support our troops in the war effort. But while heading across the ocean and the engine room goes dark, what are we to do, and how are we to protect ourselves against viruses such as Stuxnets?
Since being acquired from the Navy, the training ship Golden Bear has gone through numerous upgrades to its electronic and PLC equipment. The lube oil purifiers on board receive completely new PLCs to operate the centrifuges, and the main engine and generators are currently undergoing PLC program upgrade as we speak. TMS, or Technical Marine Services, has been with us and has been doing all of the upgrades since we came on board. The companies like TMS that have been contracted to conduct the PLC upgrades have had complete access to the PLC programs on board the vessel while they are doing the upgrades. It is not necessary for the company itself who is committing the PLC infection, but they are simply the carrier with the infected equipment. The countries that were involved in the Stuxnet infection of the Iran nuclear site infected an Iranian's computer that was used on site for the PLCs. Companies such as TMS, who frequent the ship and upgrade the ship, such as the prepositioned ROS vessels, may have no affiliation with any group that wishes to immobilize the U.S. vessel ships. However, they are simply the transporter of the Stuxnet virus or something similar to it. While filming this project, we went to the bridge to incorporate some of the ship. While we were up here, we actually found an open computer source for all of the bridge equipment. As you can see right here, there is extremely easy access to USB ports along with all of the ship's computer specifically for the bridge. With vessels like this not monitored constantly, it would be easy for a cadet or any worker to come up here and infiltrate the system. As we have already seen in the bridge, there are numerous locations around the ship where we can easily access a USB port. Right here in EOS, we have the computers that run the main engines. This is usually used for keyboards for the chief, but we can easily access it with just a simple hard drive. Around the backside of the EOS console, we also have all of the computers easily accessed with no locks. All of these right here are each separate computers, and as you can see down here, this is too long. As you can see right here, we have an open computer that could easily be accessed. Although the watch is on board in the middle of the night, I highly doubt any of the underclass would question a senior like myself from doing anything on board. I think if I just told them that I was doing something for Chief, none of them would doubt it.
Here are some examples of vulnerabilities inside the engine room. For this example, this is ballast control. Open USB ports can be seen here. Accessing these USB ports could alter data that the crew needs to efficiently run the ship. An unlocked control cabinet located underneath the main control panel is also open and unlocked. These PLCs that are located underneath here are for main engine control. Without these PLCs, the engines are useless. The next example are USB ports plugged into the instrumentation of all equipment inside the engine room. Easy access to these USB ports could be used to falsify data and trick operating engineers into thinking all equipment is running fine. Example are VFDs, or variable frequency drives, located throughout the engine room. These VFDs are used to control the speed of pumps for efficiency reasons. But without these VFDs, the pumps would be rendered inoperable. The problem is, these VFDs are very vulnerable to viruses such as Stuxnet. Next example are purifiers. The training ship Golden Bear has 6 centrifuge type purifiers located on board. 3 for lube oil, 2 for fuel oil, and 1 for the oily water separator. Each one of the purifiers is controlled by a PLC unit. These PLC units are very similar to those found in the Iran uranium enrichment facilities. And if infected with a virus such as Stuxnet and backup equipment is unavailable, without these purifiers, the ship's operations would be hindered if not completely stopped.
When I visited the Navy pre-positioned ships in Alameda, their PLC systems were just as vulnerable as those on the Bear. There was no watch, there was no security, there was no safety net to protect their PLCs from being invaded by a malicious worm such as Stuxnet. With today's technology, most engine rooms are completely automated and they are unmanned. These engine rooms require no personal interaction with the crew, and once they've been started, the PLC program takes over. So if these systems are so sophisticated, what will the crew do if they are to be infected with a program such as Stuxnet and they were to go blackout in the water?
As we saw in our scenario, the loss of propulsion or power on a ship can be a huge ordeal for when they're trying to deliver goods for conflict. Disabling a fleet of ships that are transiting to a location to provide aid, supporting the conflict can lead to the lack of supplies for said conflict. Losing efforts such as these can result in a negative outcome for the conflict that is developing because the U.S. could lose the upper hand or lose the personnel needed due to the lack of reinforcements such as ammo, rations, and equipment. To help prevent the outcomes of stucknecks, it is critical to limit the availability of the PLC programs to potential threats. This can be accomplished in many different ways depending on the company. A great example for right here in EOS is having lockable USB drives. This one right here can be easily twisted off by hand by anyone on board. This compares to the older style that we originally had on board, which actually can incorporate a lock in which only the chief and the captain would have access to. Along with this, it would be important to have the actual computers themselves locked. In this example, behind the EOS console, it would be necessary to have locks on every single computer cabinet to ensure that only the chief and the captain can gain access to it.
Okay.
Along with the lockable USB drives, it is completely necessary to ensure that the computers themselves have a passcode protected system. In this situation right here, we have the EOS computer. Although it is not connected to the PLC program on board in the engine room, the password itself is displayed right here for everyone to see. It is completely necessary to ensure that only people who are designated to have it can see it or know what it is. With such, it would be necessary to change the password at least 4 times a year to ensure that changing crew members cannot get off and let the world know what the passcode is. Along with the computers, a major base for all ships should be educating everybody on board, whether it's the steward or the chief engineer. The Coast Guard in the past years has done great advances with this, including VPDSD, vessel personnel with this designated security duties training that is now mandatory on all United States vessels. This is now being taught during O week for freshmen to ensure that everybody on the ship, even 4Cs, have the understanding of the potential threats on board the ship. Although there are numerous computers located on the ship, not all have access to PLC programs. In this scenario, it would be in the company's best interest to ensure that all computers that have access to said programs can only be accessed in the presence or by the chief engineer or captain. Even if the third assistant engineer wanted to change or modify something with the PLCs, it should only be done in the presence of the chief to ensure that there are no viruses accidentally or purposely infected on the software.